Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Monday, July 11th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo. And on today's report, President Biden is considering a public health emergency to protect abortion rights. Meanwhile, people trying to get a permit to carry a concealed weapon in New York State will have to turn over their social media history. A new state gun law has added the requirement. Then the family of a Connecticut man paralyzed from the waist down in a police van is filing a civil rights complaint against New Haven cops and their police department. Plus, Rihanna makes a new Forbes highest paid list. We'll tell you which one. And actress Jennifer Lewis gets her own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
President Biden is now considering a new option in his battle against the Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. The president says he may declare abortion access a public health emergency that would free up federal funds to expand reproductive health services in all 50 states. Now, Biden discussed his proposal with reporters during a brief break from his Sunday bike ride. The president says his fight for abortion rights will not end there. And on Friday, the president is signing an executive action to protect reproductive rights. The order will establish a task force to focus specifically on reproductive health care. It will also try and shore up some abortion medication protections, as well as make sure health privacy protections are clear. But the action only goes so far. The president says voting for politicians who support abortion rights is also very important.
You, the women of America, can determine the outcome of this issue. I don't think the court, or for that matter, the Republicans who for decades have pushed the extreme agenda, have a clue about the power of American women. But they're about to find out, in my view. It's my hope and strong belief that women will, in fact, turn out in record numbers to reclaim the rights that have taken from them by the court.
Now, the president does not have the power to overturn new laws already enacted by multiple states that restrict or ban abortion outright. That would require congressional action. The executive order that Biden signed on Friday, that expands access to abortion pills, reproductive health care, and also helps lawyers defend people who may be arrested or face criminal charges for going to another state to get an abortion. So that's good. But the thing that bothers me a little bit the most, Romeo, is that the White House has dismissed several progressive ideas that protect abortion rights. So someone, I don't know who it was, but someone suggested that maybe they allow abortion providers to work on federal property in states where abortion is banned. So that way, say they're in Mississippi or they're in Alabama where abortion is banned, they can still work on federal land. The doctors could still work and perform abortions on federal land, because we know that Black and brown women have the hardest time. They're going to have the hardest time with this, and traveling to another state may not be in the cards for them. So that was one thing that someone said. And then a lot of people are saying that the executive order just doesn't go far enough. Yeah. They are asking for travel vouchers. They are asking for financial assistance for women who do need to seek abortions. And a lot of people are making their voices heard. We saw about 1,000 protesters marching this weekend to the White House, asking President Biden to do more on this issue.
They definitely want him to do more, and I feel like his hands is tied. He can only do so much, and we have the midterms coming up, and will this be another strike against the Democrats, right? So let's think about that. Also, you're hearing stories about doctors maybe even having hospitals in the Gulf of New Mexico, right, on a boat, just so people can go and get abortions. So people are going to the extreme to try and make sure they can accommodate those that are in need. And you're right, Mimi, they continue to be out there protesting in Washington, D.C., fighting for women's rights, which is something they have the right to do. And it's so unfortunate that we're in this situation, yet another thing on top of inflation and others as well. All right, well, the White House says Brittany Griner's guilty plea to drug charges in a Russia court last week will not change their efforts to try and bring her home. In a court Thursday, Griner says this was not her intention to break the law when she traveled through a Moscow airport with cannabis oil in February. Legal analysts say Griner pled guilty as a strategy to get sympathy from the court's judge.
So by pleading guilty, there is a better chance of leniency, and hovering over this is the potential for a prisoner swap. And the only way there can be a prisoner swap between the United States and Russia is for the case to conclude in the Russian Federation. And that means that it has to have a finding of guilt.
Last week, Griner's wife, Sherelle, said President Biden and Vice President Harris spoke with her and assured Sherelle that Brittany's freedom was still a priority amongst the administration. So as we think about that, first thing I want to give a big applause to the WNBA All-Star game that went down this past weekend. They honored her. They made her an honorary starter in the lineup, which I thought was amazing. In the second half of the game, all the players came out wearing number 42. With that being said, pleading guilty, she could face up to 10 years. We do know that, right? Up to 10 years, maybe not as many. But will this get her home any sooner? Are the relationships, are the talks going to happen between the United States and Russia due to what's going on with the war and the fact that, you know, President Biden and them supporting Ukraine? So that's why I feel like there's a huge gap between trying to get her home sooner than later.
Yeah, you know, so a little bit of breaking news that came out just before we came on air, Romeo, is that former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, he's planning to travel to Russia in the coming weeks to assist in talks to free Brittany. So that is really good news because he also assisted in helping to free Trevor Reed. Now, he was the U.S. Marine that was stuck in Russia for years, and he helped negotiate his release. So he runs an organization that frees prisoners. It's called the Richardson Center for Global Engagement. And so this is what he does. And so this is promising news. Like they're not giving more information than that, other than that he's going in the coming weeks. We don't know when that will be. It just says coming weeks. So hopefully he'll be able to help in her release, and we'll see her home sooner than later. So this for me is really good news. This is promising. That means that they're actually making action steps to making this a reality of bringing Brittany home.
I agree. And, you know, she's been missed so much during this WNBA season, but more importantly, she needs to get home to her family. And it feels like we're taking the steps in the right direction. I'm hoping that lines of communication can get stronger with the United States and Russia so that we can get her back home.
Absolutely. And the trial is still underway. So we know that started, July 1st? And so they're expecting that to wrap up at the end of this month. And they're also saying that sentencing could come at the beginning of next month. So hopefully with the former governor going there, we won't have to even get to that sentencing phase. We'll have her home. So we'll see. All right, well, now that Roe versus Wade has been overturned, some progressives fear gay marriage and other reproductive rights could be in danger. But there are others who think conservative majority courts could also damage affirmative action programs on college campuses. During the fall session of the court, which begins in October, the justices will hear a pair of cases challenging the consideration of race in college campuses in the admissions process. The cases are against Harvard University and the University of North Carolina. Now, the suits argue the school's admission process discriminates against Asian American applicants. Now, lower courts have rejected claims by the conservative group representing Asian students. They have pointed to the decades of rulings that allow the use of race in college admissions. Last year, the Biden administration urged the High Court to reject a challenge to Harvard's affirmative action policy, which helped more Black and brown and Latino students get into the school.
The Biden administration is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to allow it to put in place rules that would prioritize the deportations of people from the country who pose a risk to public safety. The emergency request follows conflicting decisions by federal courts in September. The Homeland Security Department said it would pause deportations except for people who had committed acts of terrorism, espionage, or serious threats to public safety. A federal appeals court in Cincinnati overturned a district judge order that put the policy on hold in a lawsuit filed by Arizona, Ohio, and Montana. But in a separate suit filed by Texas and Louisiana, a federal judge in Texas ordered a nationwide halt to the guidance of federal appeals. Court now in New Orleans declined to step in and make a decision.
And people living in New York State who want a concealed carry permit for a gun will have to turn over their social media accounts from now on. A new law will allow government officials to consider an applicant's character and conduct before approving a permit. State lawmakers decided to put the requirement in the law following the recent mass shootings in Buffalo and around the country. Now, those shootings revealed that some of the suspects wrote racist and threatening messages on their social media posts. Now, while gun control advocates praise the bill, some free speech advocates are raising questions about how the law will be enforced. I don't really care how the law will be enforced. I think that you should absolutely have to turn over your social media. I mean, what we saw with Buffalo and even what we saw in Uvalde is a lot of these people who get these guns, they're posting stuff on social media. They're talking to people on social media, and they're announcing their plans. And so also, not even that, when you think back to people who may have mental health challenges, they're writing certain things on social media. They're writing them on their page. They're expressing themselves on social media. So I absolutely think that this is important. I think that they should have to turn over their social media accounts, and it should be examined. If you have a problem with this, are you hiding something? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like, maybe you are hiding something. And on top of that, like, if you hand over your social media information, yeah, they could probably go get a fake account, but at least you can maybe possibly track them, because there's other ways to get around it. But at least we can kind of narrow it down to who we're talking to, who we're watching, who we're making sure have a hand on the gun, that they're not doing the wrong thing with it. Because over and over again, you're right, Mimi, they always bring up the fact where they post something normally before the incident even happens.
They sure do. You just see it a lot where they're always just a cry for help sometimes. You know, it goes unnoticed with social media. And so I've said this before. We've got hip hop police officers. We've got task force. You know, if we can't assign someone to police social media, then absolutely, then this should be a requirement that you have to turn over your social media account in order to get a concealed carry weapon.
You know, and you brought up the whole hip hop police, right? There's a record out right now where in front of it is almost like a disclaimer. What I'm rapping about is not real before they go into the whole verse. So
listen,
just saying.
That's what it's come to.
That's exactly what it's come to. All right, Wisconsin voters casting absentee ballots this fall won't be able to use drop boxes anymore. A 4-3 ruling by the Wisconsin Supreme Court comes just a month before the August 9 statewide primaries. Now, use of ballot drop boxes took off during the 2020 presidential election because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Republicans in the state opposed the use of the boxes, alleging voter fraud, which was never proven in the state or around the nation. More than 40% of the votes cast in 2020 were done by absentee ballots.
And senior campaign aides to Georgia Senate candidate Herschel Walker reportedly did not know about his additional children. The Daily Beast recently exposed the fact that Walker had 3 other children he had never publicly talked about. The story became an issue because the former football star has criticized black men he accused of abandoning their children. The controversy about Walker's children is one of the several issues dogging his campaign to replace Senator Raphael Warnock in Congress. Now, Walker has been accused of lying about his academic and business background. A recent Quinnipiac poll shows Warnock leading Walker by 10 points.
Activists demanding justice for Emmett Till marched into a senior center in North Carolina just not too long ago, just last week, looking for his accuser, Curlin Bryant Donham. Now, activists recently discovered an arrest warrant for Donham. Reports say demonstrators went to 2 separate locations in the hopes of getting Raleigh police to extradite her back to Mississippi to be arrested. Back in 1955, Donham accused Till, who was only 14, of whistling at her. A week later, Till's body was discovered in the Tallahatchie River, swollen and mutilated. Donham's husband and brother were found not guilty of murder by an all-white jury. Years later, the men admitted to the murder. You know, when we first broke the story about them finding that in the basement of a courthouse, I believe in Mississippi, it was so heartbroken to understand that this young man should have still been alive, should have still had a family, right? But unfortunately, his life was taken away. Yes, she should be expedited back to Mississippi. I think 100%. And you know what? They're going to go to whatever extreme to make sure it happened, because if it was the other way around, best believe they'll be looking for justice.
Absolutely. And I think after, 67 years, it's going to continue to be on us to fight for justice. Just how his family and friends found that warrant in a basement, in a Mississippi basement, the same way it's going to be on them. I applaud these activists for going into a North Carolina senior home and looking for her, because police act as if they can't find her. They don't know what to do. They can't arrest her. And so we're like, listen, I'll show you where she is. We'll go find her. And so now come do your job and arrest her, because like I said, and I said it last week or the week before that, I'll say it again. If we can arrest somebody, we can use Cosby as a case study. If we can find someone and we can arrest them and we can make charges stick, we can make charges stick for her for murder of this little boy who was 14 years old. So I applaud these kids these protesters for continuing to push, because like I've always said, if we don't push for us, no one will. We will be fighting for justice forever. forever if we don't take one step forward.
You know, and for us, it's always 10 toes to the ground. It's been like that since day one, and we're still fighting for certain rights. And this is just another example of what we have to do to make sure that we get justice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, a Florida construction company is being ordered to pay $50,000 to settle allegations of racial discrimination against its black workers. The suit filed with the Equal Opportunity Commission says a father and son management duo for Lone Wolf Resources ordered a supervisor to stop hiring black workers because they were lazy. The EEOC complaint also alleges black employees were subjected to racial slurs in the workplace. It also says black workers were always given the hardest and less desirable work task at the company. Like a black employee says he was told to pump water out of a pond manually. He says that task was never given to white workers. Black workers also say they were denied performance reviews, which affected their chances of getting a raise. How do you pump water out of a pond manually? How does that even
How does it make sense in today's time, right? With technology, why would that even be
Why
an
would
option?
that be an even option? And I think that's the point of this lawsuit. But my question is, did they get $50,000 each? Or did they get $50,000 that they have to spread between everybody? Because no matter what, $50,000 still seems low.
Yeah,
they were
definitely
denied promotions because they didn't do performance evaluations. They had to do manual labor. They were called lazy. For me, $50,000 feels a little low, Romeo.
It definitely does. And you think about that, when you get that money, it's going to be taxed. I'm sure it is, right? So now it's going to be almost half of that. And then, like you said, they they didn't allow him yearly performance reviews. They always denied that. They hoped that he would resign in this particular situation. So it's just another way to push your employees out when you should be bringing them in. We talk about diversifying the workplace, and we talk about making things better for people of color. This is not the way to do it. This is the way to sound like we're back like 60 or 70 years ago, 60 or 70 years ago. And sometimes things like this make us feel like we're still there. So it is very, very, very unfortunate. But $50,000 definitely not enough, whether it's something to split or per person, not enough.
It is not enough. I have so many questions about how this all went down and how long this was able to happen and what kind of, it says it's a construction operation, but what kind of checks and balances were put in place that this went on long enough for this to even go down this way.
To this point.
Yeah.
And you're pumping water out of a pond manually? Come on.
I know.
Makes no sense.
Crazy.
All right, a U.S. federal judge is approving an agreement to settle the segregation case with an Alabama school system. The Madison County School Board has agreed to take steps to ensure equal education opportunities for African American students. That includes involving them in gifted programs and college prep courses. Administrators for the majority white district also pledged to take steps to hire more black faculty and school administrators.
And the former Cleveland cop who killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice quit his new job at a Pennsylvania police station before starting his first shift. Timothy Lohman was sworn in last Tuesday as the only officer for the town of Tioga, a rural community of only 800 people, just 300 miles from Cleveland. Pressure from local community forced Lohman to withdraw his application. Now, back in 2014, Tamir was playing with a pellet gun outside a recreation center when he was shot and killed seconds after Lohman got out of his police cruiser. Now, Lohman was never charged in Rice's death. He was fired by Cleveland police for lying on his job application. You know what? The fact that this man is still alive and even allowed to apply as a police officer will always boggle me. And kudos to this community for doing their work and standing up and fighting this, because he just should not be able to be a police officer. And the brazenness of it all, to the fact where he still feels like he can come and he can apply to be a police officer is white privilege.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to call it what it is, because how is he still working in the police department in any city, any state? You've seen the track record. He didn't get arrested. He didn't go to jail for killing Tamir Rice, but he got for lying. That's why he lost his job.
Right.
Yet and still, you're going to hire him. But this happens over and over again across the country, and that's why we have incidents that continue to happen to people of color, whether they're getting shot, whether they're getting beaten, because you're not really thoroughly looking at these police officers, making sure they should or should not be fired.
There's no consequences ever, you know, and that's why we celebrate, which, you know, I hate the word celebrate, but that is what we have to do when we do get a small win, is we celebrate, but there's no consequences. This is why we continue to see these things over and over and over again, like with, you know, some of the stories we have coming up. So.
Agreed. All right, a Kentucky man is facing a federal charge connected with an online racist threat that he allegedly made during a 5th grade Zoom video conference. Brian Adams was indicted last week of transmitting an interstate threat to injure or kidnap 5th grade kids. Now, Sims reportedly told the children he would hang them from a tree. Teachers said some kids covered their eyes and ears and began crying. The school is predominantly African American as well.
The family of a Black Connecticut man who was paralyzed in a police van are filing civil rights charges against the cops involved. Randy Cox was being transported to jail when the driver hit his brakes to avoid an accident. Cox, who was handcuffed behind his back, was not wearing a seatbelt. Cox went headfirst into the van's wall. He's paralyzed from the chest down. When he told cops he couldn't move, they roughly pulled him out of the van and threw him into a cell. His family and supporters say the police mocked his cries for help and began accusing him of being drunk. Now, video shows the officers dragging him by his feet from the van and placing him into a holding cell before paramedics take him to the hospital. Now, Cox remains hospitalized, unable to speak because of the breathing tube in his throat, his neck, his face. It doesn't matter. What matters is this has to stop. This story is like, it takes me back to Freddie Gray. This is so reminiscent of everything that happened. And once again, Romeo, to the point that you made earlier, is why these things continue to happen, because there are no real consequences. Like, for an example, these officers who did this to this man are on paid administrative leave. There were 5 officers. And so what they did do, what the city of New Haven did do, is they made some police reforms now to kind of fix it so this will never happen again. And that includes making sure officers follow the speed limit when transporting someone, making sure they don't use electronic devices while driving, make sure that the prisoners are wearing their seat belts, and that they check on their physical health throughout the detention process. I don't know if that's the answer. How about you start from the beginning and treat people like they are human beings? No matter what this man did, the treatment that he got once he was placed in the back of that van did not warrant him being paralyzed now. So there's nothing he could have done. And so his family and I think Attorney Ben Crump are fighting for civil charges against the officers who should be arrested and charged.
Yeah, they definitely should be. And this is, every time I see this video, it's so haunting to me, because first of all, under the state laws, they have someone in a seatbelt, especially in the back of a van, right? So if you have your seatbelt on the front, you mean you cannot buckle him up? Not sure if I've even seen seatbelts in the video, which if we ran that back and saw that, it makes matters even worse, the fact they didn't do this. Also, this reminds me when I was in 5th grade and I was riding on my friend's shoulders and the teacher came around the corner and they dropped me and I broke my knee. The principal didn't believe me, right? He made me crawl to the water fountain just to get something to drink. My knee was broken. But he didn't believe me. I'm crying, waiting for my mom to get there. Of course, there was an incident when she did arrive because of the way they treated me. This is a situation that's 100 times worse. We have to do better and be better with this for sure.
And the way that they just tossed him when he said that he couldn't walk. The way that they just tossed him. Like, we were just watching the video there. This is my first time seeing this video, and just to watch it and see it and realize that this man couldn't walk and they tossed him like that. So painful, so heartbreaking.